I'm supposed to believe she went from being so chaotic in her decision making to being this community changing force. Hey gang, welcome back to another video. So, my reading momentum for June was kind of slow. I usually don't feel like this, but I kind of felt like I was in a reading slump, like I wasn't super motivated to read. And usually I'm very meticulous, going through my TBR, picking out books, and sticking with those choices. But I think for July, I'm gonna be a bit more fluid, probably do a lot more mood reading. I'll save more on that though for my July TBR video. What we're here to do today is get into my reads of June. Chaos Destiny is a post-apocalyptic survival romance. I didn't read a lot of romance-centered books in May, and y'all know I love me some romance. So I definitely wanted to have more of that in June. Our MMC is Gage Wolfe, a military vet who has survived war and tragedy, but now must also survive this new reality of the world being devastated by a pandemic. He, his childhood friend, and her newborn must travel looking for a safe place to stay after all hell breaks loose. Now, Gage's love interest is not his childhood friend, but Dr. Taylor Diaz, one of the doctors that was brought in by the government to find a viable vaccination. I liked that the MMC was helping his friend until they could find a safe place for them. He was written to be this really great friend, super loyal, and was so sweet with the baby. I expected this read to be an instant attraction between Gage and Dr. Taylor, though there was some pretty weak drama that was supposed to give the plot some conflict unrelated to the zombies trying to eat people's brains. Miss Sybil Sweet has always been lucky. The universe has constantly made a way for her, but she hasn't necessarily been stable. She has consistently lost jobs, bounced around, and makes impulsive decisions on the regular. And all of this is a concern for her family. Now, one day she decides to spend her last on a lottery ticket and a donut, and ends up accidentally leaving behind the winning multi-million dollar ticket with her almost one night stand, Kieran. Kieran, being the honest and responsible individual that he is, posts online about the mystery woman and trying to return her lost ticket. This act of kindness brings some much needed publicity to his grandfather's struggling donut shop. When they meet again, they strike a deal. They'll fake date for a few months, and here's what they get out of it. Sybil will look stable at her sister's wedding, that she has her ish together, and Sybil will help Kieran pay off some of his family's debts. The premise is super cute, the vibes are promising, but as I kept reading, and this is no joke, y'all, Just Our Luck caused me some anxiety. Sybil is written to be super flighty, clumsy, and again, impulsive. Eventually, something is revealed that helps explain some things about her habits or what influences her decisions. Still, The way she went about things and handled the winnings had me yelling at the book so much, okay?
Put it in!
You're facing the wrong way, sir.
All right, give me the money!
Exactly. Put it in a bag. Put it in my bag. Let me explain. Without giving too much away, it was so hard to read about some of the decisions that Sybil made with that money. I'm supposed to believe she went from being so chaotic in her decision making to being this community changing force. Nah. Honestly, I was hesitant to turn the pages because of what Sybil would do next. Quick sidebar for y'all. What would y'all do with a multi-million-dollar ticket? I'll put down in the comments some of the things I would do. Of course, this being a romance, I gotta touch on that. The romance was hot, then cold, then tepid, then hot again. And all of this was surprisingly from Kieran. He is supposed to be the grump to her sunshine, but he was so inconsistent in his perception of how he felt about and what he wanted with Sybil. Overall, what worked for me, what saved the book, was the supporting characters. I liked Kieran's granddad, his sister, and Sybil's friends. They helped ground both Sybil and Kieran in various moments throughout the book. Towards the end of the month, my reading kind of picked up, and y'all will be proud of me because I listened to Howls Castle when I didn't have time to actually pick up the book. And Kelsey, thank you, by the way, for letting me borrow your copy. So many of you know that the Studio Ghibli movie of Howl's Moving Castle is iconic, and the sense of nostalgia that people get while watching it. So I went into this book thinking I was going to feel the same way. I want my Howl's Moving Castle fans to brace themselves because the book is very different in some key ways, and I don't want to discourage you from reading the book, but I want you to be aware. In the movie, Howl and Sophie's relationship is way more romanticized than what takes place in the book. The movie in general has a more whimsy and romantic feeling about it. Of course, set against the threat of war. In the book, there's no clear romantic feelings, but there is a spark of something. Sophie actually has more of a magical influence than the movie lets on. And lastly, many of the characters in the book have completely different roles in the movie. Here's some things that stayed pretty true though. Howl is still vain, dramatic, and bad with money. Sophie, at the beginning of this story, is still resigned at the beginning to this predictable, boring life. But when the Witch of the Waste cursed her, instead of her falling into despair, she fully leans into her older woman persona. And they didn't deviate from her marching across the moors and barging into Howls Castle. The book had a lot more of a series of magical escapades and low-key chaos than one grand adventure. It's quirky and full of banter, and you'll get a lot more of the day-to-day antics with Sophie, Howl, Markle, and of course, Calcifer. I recommend the audiobook for sure because the narrator was top tier. She does justice in emphasizing the wit and sharpness in all of the characters' dialogues. I love her accent and it fits Sophie perfectly, especially when she gets cursed. Set on the outskirts of Rainbow Town, This story follows Seddon, a lonely girl who finds herself presented with a mysterious opportunity. Now it's said, if you send a letter detailing your misfortunes to an old abandoned house, you might receive a ticket to the Rainfall Market. And if you do, on the first day of the rainy season, the ticket becomes your key to a place where you can literally choose a new life. To her surprise, Saturn receives one of these tickets. She's been struggling with loneliness, familial issues, and a lack of direction. At the Rainfall Market, she is joined by Isha, a magical cat, and they wander through whimsical spaces like enchanted bookstores. Y'all know I would definitely want to go there. A restaurant filled with giants, and a casino where the gambling never ends. But there's a catch to this opportunity. She has 1 week to make her decision. If not, she'll disappear into the market forever. Even though this book is written for middle grade readers, I definitely recommend it to someone of any age. I really like books where a young main character is spirited away into a strange and semi-dangerous realm. Those stories often blend whimsy with hard truths, and this one was no exception. The author takes a creative approach to the idea that life can feel and be overwhelming or unfair at times. She conveys that sometimes things really are outside of our control, but what we can control is the choices we make, the faith we put in ourselves, and the small changes we commit to. If I had one wish for this book, it would have been an epilogue. I wanted to see how things turned out for Seddon, but honestly, I think the open-ended conclusion was intentional. Seddon stepped out on faith, believing her life could change for the better. And I think that is exactly the message the author wanted to leave. We don't always need all of the answers. Sometimes we just need hope. My most enjoyed read of the month was written by Olivia Atwater, and it was Half a Soul. Theodora, aka Dora, is fairy cursed and only has half her soul. For her, this means her emotions are dulled or muted. And of course, this has caused her some issues in polite society. She just wants to keep her head down during the London season and be there to support her cousin. From there, she gets swept into fairy drama, class issues, and discovering that love exists even for those with only half their soul. One of my hesitations with reading stories set in the Regency time frame is the dialogue or the writing style, but I actually really enjoy the dialogue. Miss Atwater does a great job of staying true to the time period and keeping it readable. This story does touch on deeper issues, especially for a Regency fantasy. There's this intentional look at how people would have been treated in the lower classes. On the romance, Elias's and Dora's romance felt wholesome and refreshing. Because of her curse, Dora doesn't act with the usual emotional cues, but she tells Elias how she feels. Their connection is built on honesty and respect. Well, that wraps up my reads for June. Let me know if you read any of these, especially Howls Castle. If you did, were you just as surprised at the differences as I? Thanks again, y'all, for tuning in for another video. I appreciate your time and viewership. Until next time, stay safe, be blessed, and remain unapologetically you.